Yeah. And then I'm recording now if you guys are cool. We're still just talking though, that's fine. Um and so many other bands I was turned on to through her as well at the time. Um that are still some of my favorites today, you know. And then I've tried to with what I do expose people to other cool music over the years through whatever channels I could, be it here on Extra. I do other things as well, and it's just and it's sometimes it's a fight, but that's the joy of what I do because I have to cover some of the bigger stuff as well in terms of the popular artists that we just have to do to get on the air in a show like ours. But I find such pleasure in being able to feature real talent and real exciting musicians amid all the other silly stuff. You know, that's the joy.
Who knew? Did you see us live?
I never did. No,
Okay.
no, never had the chance. Okay. Is Han ready? I think you're still
Yeah.
there. No, you were muted. There we
Yep.
go.
Yep.
Nice. Are you guys good to go?
Good to go.
Everybody happy?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll keep this short and sweet but special and get things covered. First of all, it's just great to see the three of you together, somewhat together, at least right here.
Nice to be
How
here.
how nice is this for you guys even to be together, even on via Zoom to have this conversation? I'm sure there's been talk conversations and meetings leading up to this, of course, but what's it like being back in any form?
Well, it's great. I mean, uh, since the Hugo Largo dissolved, we've only had like kind of sporadic connections altogether. So it's nice. Yeah.
Well, Hans Line, he and I did music together. We put out a release together, so
Uh-huh.
we see each other pretty often.
Okay, okay.
But
when
yes,
when we began this process, when really Mimi, I think, is so much the instigator of this happening and these re-releases happening, and Han is sort of the one who's wrangled it into a technical form into making it happen. But and I've continually said this to Mimi, so this won't come as news to her because I probably tell her this at least once every other week. As we began this process, I told Mimi that just renewing our friendship has been as important to me as the idea of this music
Mhm.
being out there in the world. Because before any of this, before all of this, 41 years ago when Mimi met, we were first friends. And this band was formed out of a friendship and an artistic friendship, and because we made each other laugh, and because we inspired each other. And like so many people in their 20s, things become difficult. And the fact that we are in each other's orbit again as friends, yeah, and as colleagues, but mostly as friends, has been as important to me as the fact that these actual physical things are reaching the world again. Though I am so happy for that and so grateful for the work Mimi and Han have done to make that possible, because of all the many, many odd things that I've done in my life. And I think this is something that you'll find very common to Mimi, to Han, to myself, and I'm assuming to Adam as well, is that we've lived strange and diverse artistic and business and personal lives in the years since Hugo Largo, really all over the place. And of all of the strange and occasionally reasonably high profile things that I've been involved in the last 40 years of my life, by far, without any doubt, Hugo Largo is the one that I am most proud of. And it wouldn't, and when I say that I'm proud of it, I'm proud of what Mimi, Han, Adam, and myself constructed, and how unique and beautiful I hope that was.
And the question is, why did this take so long? I know you've all been busy with wonderful things. Why now is this wonderful thing happening? Why at this point? And who kind of instigated this? And how did this come to be?
it wasn't my idea. It was my manager's idea, and he worked on wrangling away the rights from our record label
Hmm.
for about 5 years without telling me. So it's all his instigation, working with Michael Crumper of Missing Piece is somebody that we first were signed to. So it's like going home. He's super enthusiastic. He was the right place to be. But now it's just partly because of that timing of getting the rights back. It's but it's perfect because it's even now strange to us that it's, you know, we're looking at the music, stroking our chins because it's far from who we are.
Sure.
And this is okay. Before doing this, I was thinking, okay, what can I share? And this is what I was thinking. To me, Hugo Largo was the five senses. In Tim is the mouth. He's the one that can explain or be Baroque in his wordage and make it sound like we reinvented sliced bread. He's also encyclopedic in how much he knows about music. I'm the nose in that I am instinctual. It's more about the essence that is felt, but not necessarily spoken about. The band would come to me like I was a psychic and ask my advice about which record label we should go with. And then Han is the ears, and he basically produced everything. And he taught us all the theory of music and how something feels, and to have these bass frequencies be a physical experience in the live show, and then have me, you know, this vocal being like this gymnastics jumping all over the place. And then he was the thread, the violin that really was able to sew everything together.
Mm-hmm.
And then Adam was and is a photographer, and he did most of the pictures that we used on artwork. So he was heavily behind how we looked and how we were presented to the world, but also kind of with the eye, a bit of a perspective help with the band. And then the last would be the five senses is touch. And hopefully that was the ultimate. In looking back, I hope that the touch was part of how we create a mystery. That we
That's
bring
great.
something fun.
I love
And
it.
now do
There
you
we
like
go.
mine?
There we go. I love
Something
it all.
different, like you say, unusual.
Yes, for sure. And it was incredibly, as I was telling you earlier, it was incredibly exciting for an audience, for me, for a listener to have this, to have that world come together that you just described. It was completely unique at the time. It's still unique today, which makes it even more wonderful that all this time has passed and there's still, as far as I know, you guys will probably tell people, you probably have people that you know, I wouldn't say copied, but were inspired by you. But there's been really nothing like it before, since, ever. Were you conscious of how unique that was at the time and how exciting that was at the time? And has that stayed with you? You must take pride in that.
I mean, I think it's, you know, going back to like Tim saying that, you know, initially we were kind of friends. You know, it's kind of a reflection on the way art was made in general in those days, and especially in a place like New York. You know, when I think back to those times, there was kind of this feeling of it was a playground, and all of the artistic disciplines kind of mixed in a way that doesn't exist today. So, for example, you would go to a show and it would be a mixture of like theater people, musicians, visual artists, and it wasn't really, you know, just the different disciplines separated into their own little clubs or camps. I feel like it's probably related to the you know, capitalism, and you know, it's hard to have an affordable space for people to gather.
Mhm.
You know, but it was a climate in which like people from different areas could find their common points, you know, and I think that's largely kind of the spark of what the initial spark of Hugo Largo, you know. Of course, Tim had this idea of like, you know, a bass driven ensemble, but like, you know, in terms of like who joined this seed of an idea, you know, it was a very playful climate in those times, you know, and I think as Tim said, it was, you know, we were friends first, and it creates a different environment than today when people are just like, okay, thinking about like what musical genre
Lifestyle.
you want to
Sure.
cater
Yeah.
to, you want to
Yeah.
appeal to, as
A
an
little bit more
initial,
manufactured.
yeah, as an initial, you know, impulse, and it wasn't like that, you know. I kind of slid into the band, you know. I was doing the sound, and all of a sudden, I think somebody said, "Well, you know, sorry, you're in the band now." I was like, "Okay," you know. So, you know,
Well,
That's
he
great.
started playing behind, he was doing sound and playing violin behind us,
Uh-huh.
you know, at the booth. So it was, that also made a sense of magic. But that's, I think at the time, art bands weren't, I mean, the Talking Heads, obviously there were plenty out there. And I love so many of the people that we toured with.
Yeah.
But you'd walk into a beer-soaked club that, you know, the big guys, and we're trying to get the sound, and always there's this feedback because my voice was at that place and the bass was this place, and they'd come up to the microphone and go like, check, check, check. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
All the time, all the time.
But does that kind of speak to the whole thing, blending all that, what could be called avant-garde or called with a pop sensibility, obviously, and having 4-minute songs and putting out a release? Talk about that kind of juxtaposition, which kind of made your band special.
Well, I'm going to say that the very earliest germination of this, which both Mimi and Han have spoken to, is the very earliest germination before I even had, I think before I even maybe met these guys, or when I was first meeting Mimi, was there was this idea that I was so fascinated by the noise punk rock was making, and the noise being made on the Lower East Side, you know, with Glenn Branca and with the Swans and with Sonic Youth and with Luck and with Live Skull and with Radar. And I mentioned all of those bands specifically because those are the bands that I was going to see every night in 1982 and 1983, and punk rock and hardcore bands as well. And I became personally fascinated by the idea of taking that sort of like, you know, human machine noise and doing it quietly. And then, but that was just a notion, that was just an idea. And the two bass idea, you know, honestly, I don't know where that came from, but that was just a seed. And it was waiting to be germinated by these extraordinary people. And it's interesting when I listen, if you follow all the art and all the music that Han and Mimi have done since then, that's still all of what Mimi was speaking to, all of what Han was speaking to, that extraordinary thing that was happening in New York in the early and mid 1980s, it's still there. You know, this idea of like beer soaked art, this idea that we would play on the same bills as Eric Bogosian and as even young They Might Be Giants, and all these weird art noise people and pop people and everything. It was all one thing. And it just, you know, the idea that we had this big lump of Play-Doh, all these different colors, each of us, Adam, Han, Mimi, and Tim, all held a different color of Play-Doh. Really, we did. And that somehow it came together under our mutual oversight into this thing that was just delicate but weird, and delicate and ethereal but somehow very powerful. I am playing like the video that I'm playing. I listened to the remix work and the remastering work Han did, say on Martha, which I consider almost the peak of what we did, the song Martha.
Sure.
And the visuals, it was Mimi's idea to bring in new visuals for that. And I listen to that and I go, wow, I don't think that's dated. It still feels ahead of its time to me. It still feels everything that we could have ever meant for it to be. And yeah, it feels like New York City in the 1980s, but it also feels like this beautiful mixture of like just art and energy and electricity that I think only the four of us could create. And sometimes I think to myself that any one of us, Han, Mimi, Adam, Tim, could have done Hugo Largo, but only the four of us together could have done Hugo Largo. And man, I listen to a song like
See?
Martha and
Sliced
listen to the
sliced bread. He
visuals.
makes it sound like sliced bread.
And then I see the new visuals that Mimi has brought into this
No,
and
no, that's
into
the
this.
Tall Yarden. Tall Yarden did the one for Martha.
Right. And it's just, you know, it's just, I'm so proud of it. I really am. And so proud of all four of us.
Mhm.
There's
And
a
you
lot of
mentioned,
warmth.
So
It's
grateful
true.
that for Mimi's manager and so grateful for Michael Crumper for making it all happen.
sure, you mentioned
Yeah.
out of its time, and I'm sure a lot of people have credited you guys being ahead of your time, of course, as well. To have this stuff out now and being re-released, what does that mean to you in terms of new eyes, new ears? All the senses you talked about are going to be excited again, in so many ways. What's it like seeing young people hear about your band for the first time? They're going to be listening to your music for the first time. They're going to be discovering this along with old fans like me, all the new ears. That must be such an exciting part of this for you guys.
Something that I find fun in being as far away from it is I don't know what's going on. It's new to me, you know, in that like looking back at lyrics, I can't remember the impulse of like there's this green muck on my boots and what wondering what happened to all those lizard tails and why no one keeps a black book. Come back late, late, late. All the furniture is missing. It's like that's not even poetry. That's just like a bag of what the heck is it talking about? So that would be lovely to imagine that it's off kilter in a way, and then sonically it's also it's hard because there's such a glut of music that it's people that are just discovering it that are pushing it and interested in um, you know, even doing a cover song of Shauna Falana's band, I'll say. Um, and there's a lot of warmth. Everybody's being really um, like not critical. It's being embraced in kind of the smallness of it. It's like this is its own little niche in its own little place. So that's what I hope is that through some sort of curation that it comes to somebody and it just stands out and just being unusual and the sonic, you know, all everybody that contributed their parts of it, the
And Han,
bass.
sonically, I think no small part of that is just the sheer beauty of what you all did. And
Yeah,
that beauty is still so needed, especially now. And I think that there's an immediate gut reaction to listening to this stuff now that feels fresh, like, oh yes, that makes me feel good. There's this basic reaction that just is soothing, in a magical kind of way, because you are transported with your lyrics and you're transported with the music and you can go to that other place and kind of deal with things easier. That's the joy of music, the joy of art that you all are so aware of and has been part of your lives. So Han, if you could just talk about just that sonic landscape and why that still holds up and just the beauty of what you do, as artists. How important it was to sound that beautiful.
Yeah, it's, the music kind of the music was written in such a way that, in a way that I really haven't written music like it, in the same process since, in the sense that we kind of just came together and just like slowly, organically started molding clay, and it was, I
Separate,
think,
but
yeah,
separate. Each person, nobody ever told me what lyrics to do. Nobody told you what to play.
no. Um, and I think it was just our natural inclinations to create that music. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to make beautiful pastoral, lullabies. I mean, I think that's what came out. It wasn't a grand design. It was like, oh, this is what it can be, And I think something, I don't want to sound like an old fogey, but there's something very like with the kind of way records sound these days, there's something very kind of exposed and elemental about the way Hugo Largo sounds that I think
Mm.
ca stands apart. It sounds like, you say timeless, but it also sounds like kind of like the way music used to sound, and it, and even though we, of course, utilized all of the available recording technology at the time, you know, it has this feeling of people in a room, and I, which was all music before, but now I don't know. I think it's a kind of like emotional texture that I think could be welcome to a lot of ears these days.
For
I mean,
sure.
we have a very small but passionate following, but then there's a certain kind of age level where people are completely unaware of the band.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think it'll be interesting to see like how their reaction to something that's nearly 40 years old at this
Right.
point.
What does that mean in terms of what's next, in terms of the future, in terms of shows, in terms of new music? How many of those, what kind of conversations have taken place? What are your hopes and dreams for the next chapter?
Well, everybody thinks
Love that
that
the music's out there. Love
everybody
that.
thinks
Love
that's a
that that's possible now, that people have been hearing it. I mean, just to pick up, I think it's important. I want to pick up on something which Hans said, which is Hugo Largo is so much about what's not there. It's about not filling up the space. And when I listen to the music, I hear that. And I can only imagine when Han went through the process of rebuilding this for this release, to hear the things in the headphones that are so different than the things you hear through headphones now. And again, it's all about like, I used to say over and over, and then I apologize to interrupt the question, but I can't remember who was the first person to say this, if it was Mimi, if it was myself, if it was Han, but something we used to say all the time, it sounds like Mimi to me. Something we used to say all the time is that we were artistic but not artsy. And I do think that what Han was picking up on before, that you listen to what we're doing, and like say the great classical pianists, where you hear the instrument, who aren't just playing the text, they're playing the instrument, they're playing the room. You're hearing the room, you're hearing the space. And I'm very, very proud that pretty much live, Hugo Largo always sounded pretty much like the records did. And that's because of all the space. It was our instruments. It was what was coming out of the amps. It was what was coming off of the strings. It was what was coming out of Mimi's chest and throat and brain. It was what was coming out of our heads. And having said all that, I'll let you go back to the question I interrupted, and I apologize.
No, that's all fascinating, of course. But in terms of where this leaves you guys in terms of the future, this is collections out, going to be coming out now. What are your hopes and dreams for what's next? Have you guys had those conversations about where this could lead?
The band has not regrouped.
What I'd like to say is we're very happy for it being out there in a capsule, that it hopes to be represented as it was. I don't want to try to recreate. It's not as though it's fragile, but I don't feel like it's time to recreate it and try to compete in this who's got talent type of environment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not always on pitch. it's not a clean thing. It's not, I didn't know what I was doing. I was trained as a dancer. I sang as a dancer. So I feel a little protective of how it was. I'm excited to continue, you know, putting music out there and performing. It's very much a collaborative experience, but I like how it sits as it was, and it's going to be brought out to people in a way that they don't know the whole history. They don't need to know it, and to come forward as, you know, a band that's trying to get attention now, as a live band, or as a, where we're in different parts of the world, it's just not going to work that way.
Mhm.
So
Which
I'd
makes
be
sense.
much more excited to hear how what would happen with a 25-year-old or a band in their 20s inspired by what we do than to hear what we would do now in our 60s.
Mhm,
Right.
mhm.
right. And I'll just say one more thing. I can remember somebody walking toward me in the East Village, and they just went like, they just were like, all of a sudden tilted their head and got all soft. And I go, that's a Hugo Largo fan. I know that's a Hugo Largo fan.
So,
So I
so
appreciate being
special.
able to touch people. And I also appreciate that you're the one, you know, you're not a talking head, that you're a fan and you've listened to this, and that feels really nice to have that sort of care for something that was, it was small. It was not, you know, put
No,
into a place of world dominance.
yeah, no, it meant a lot to me, as it did a lot of people right then, and it's kind of stuck with me. And this is so exciting and wonderful to have this music out there again
So sweet.
for
That's so
for
nice.
but for new ears as well. I'm excited for new people to hear, not people like me, but I am excited for new people to hear that, because I'm always, you know, like everyone, we're always trying to expose them to things. Like I probably made tapes of this for my friends back in the day as well, but now that this is coming out in such a grand fashion, the way you all want it to be re-released upon the world, it's very exciting for me, as I'm sure it is for other people
Yeah.
as well. So it's really cool. I wanted to ask you guys about Stipe's influence, Michael Stipe's friendship and collaboration, what that meant to you all at the time.
I think it was, you know, it just added a little excitement and charge to the whole affair, you know. I
Jim
think
was
there's
the one that
kind of,
made that happen.
yeah, I think it's kind of an intangible element that you can't really say, oh, it's this or that. It just kind of charged the whole affair, I would say.
Mhm.
I think he's a very similar artist to Mimi. I really do. In so much as I think when Michael goes to a thrift store and buys a shirt, it is one of a whole piece with his art, with him as an artist. And I think Mimi's the same way. I think everything Mimi does, I suspect when Mimi boils water to make eggs, she does it as an artist. And I think Michael's exactly the same way. Michael, and I think him and Mimi share that in common. I think that they're people, some people are born with birthmarks. I think Mimi and Michael were born as artists.
Mhm.
And I think when they met, when they came together, when they were able to collaborate, there was a real kinship there with the way that they worked, with the way that they shaped words, and just as importantly, with the way that they shaped the idea of being a person on stage facing an audience, and the way that they shaped the idea of being a person, a supposed front person in a band, both of which I think were roles that were essentially alien to them, in which they said, I'm not going to let this be alien to me. I'm going to claim this as my own. And I'm so happy that he was able to, you know, when he first heard our very first early demos and took an interest in the band, that would be 1985 or 1986, 1985 that he heard them. In 1986 that he said, let's go down to John Keane's studio in Athens and work together. I'm so happy that he was able to use his artistic lifestyle and his potential to reach an audience, that he was willing to share that with us.
And then he spent, I think, years performing at least snippets of Hugo Largo work on stage. It ended up on so many bootlegs and things that people would listen to, not to mention expose all those arenas to for the people that were really listening, that can go do a little research afterwards. I'm sure that was exciting for you guys as well, because that did open up probably a whole nother world at the time.
We had a lot of cheerleaders. I think he was instrumental in creating an environment at John Keene. He put the candles around. He was our cheerleader on the
Yeah.
side. But to say that we performed the same, I remember him as a mumbler. I remember him as not right. Han too. Han couldn't string a whole sentence together for years, and I'm always like, you know, I
Right,
need
right.
the attention of the audience, and I'm demanding. And we sang together somewhere, and he's like this the whole time, trying to get his pitch and, you know, cowering behind me. So I think we were a little different
I
in
think
that.
she's right. I think I kept, I reformat, I revised
And
that
also
comment. But what I was really just trying to say is that they're both true and born artists.
and
whether-
I do feel like Han maybe feels the same way. As I have a little chant to myself, just saying, just be normal, because that artistic thing does rear its head. Absolutely.
Well, this is also wonderful. I'm just picturing college students now listening to your music in ceramic studios or in headphones walking to class, and people studying real music, you know, musicians, that because you guys have so much talent, real musicians studying this incredibly exciting, you know, creation that you guys have made over the years.
The advantage of being ahead of, I've always said that Hugo Largo were ahead of their time, but not necessarily influential, meaning there weren't necessarily enough people who heard us for us to be actually influential. Regardless, I'd like to think that when we hear the music now, and again, some of this I'm going to say is thanks to the sort of the brushing and polishing that Han did. When people hear the music now, it does not sound the tiniest bit dated. So maybe that means, yeah, we really were, quote unquote, ahead of our time, in the sense that 40 years later, 35 years later, it still sounds fresh. As so strange or as different as it was then, it sounds fresh now. And again, I'll emphasize this. If somebody is working, doing their ceramics project or doing anything, or trying to think of composing music, and they're in their 20s, and they're even the tiniest bit moved or inspired by what we do, and they take that away with them, that is so much more powerful than anything the 3 or 4 of us could do on stage moving forward as a unit.
Well,
I'm
you
just
guys,
so proud that it's out there, and hopefully it will have that kind of influence.
I think so. It's very exciting, and I think all of what you're saying is coming to pass, and I hope so many new ears get to enjoy this, and so many new eyes get to treasure the photos and dive into what Hugo Largo is and was. And you know, congratulations on this. It's great that this is happening, and it's great talking to you all.
Thanks so much. Yeah. I
Thank
was
you.
going to say though, I much prefer the term timeless than ahead of our time.
That's good. That's good.
I'll agree with that.
Important distinction.
Yes.
So
And
let's
Han,
hope
I've been
it's
digging your solo stuff, Han. I've made a point of listening to some of this of late, and I want to dive in more. It's incredible work you've been doing. Yeah. No, you guys are all amazing. This is a real thrill for me just to
Wow.
talk to you, and I'm gonna enjoy this release and spread the word on it for you guys, and
Thank you so much.
do what I can to make sure as many people hear it. And I wish you all, you know, good luck and health, and whatever your artistic endeavors lead you.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So sweet. Thank you very much.
Yes.
No,
Who would have
truly
thought?
my pleasure.
Okay.
Oh wait, well I hardly ever do this while I still have you. Is it all right if I take a photo screenshot type of thing?
Yeah.
Since you're all actually here, it's pretty neat. Uh-oh, what I missed? All right. Okay, all right.
Does that work?
I don't know. I've done this twice in 5 years since the pandemic, I think, but let's see. You got something. You guys are the best. Congrats on
You know,
this.
I just have to also say, walking into something like this, you're like, oh, extra, it's a big deal. Knows the band and is a champion. Thank you very much.
No, truly my pleasure, and thank you for talking to me. Good luck
Bye,
with all.
Adam.
Bye bye.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
leave.